first question here is, right, when I was young, I felt unwanted and felt this need to excel to be accepted by parents and my peers, right? As I've grown to love myself, I noticed the extreme lengths black men go to show that they are somebody. Have you experienced this in your personal life?
The desire to be somebody. I definitely, have experienced that. I think there's something in all of us, particularly young men, but humans in general, but particularly young boys, that you wanna impress your father. You want to impress the people around. Typically, you develop this relationship when you're younger. If I do good, I get good grades, I get validation, I get good job. They're happy with me, they're pleased with me. And so from as early as you can understand, you're developing this understanding, A plus B equals this. I think in general, whether you're coming from a context where you have, a father, a mother, and a father who's affirming you, you still have that desire. But in particular, if you don't have that present, father figure or, mother affirming you in a healthy way, you now are going out into the world hungry, not full from that. And so you now have this desire and validation. And that's even beyond just that. I think there's something in how I think men are made and how we're designed to want to perform, or understanding that there's some level of sacrificial nature to, I kill what I eat, right? And so you have all of those playing together. And so you're essentially going out into the world saying, I'm somebody. And I think the truth is, in how we're made, whether if you're faith, I think that we're all designed to be somebody. We are somebody, right? But sometimes we go about validating we're somebody and not necessarily the healthiest ways.
And how did you overcome that struggle?
Yeah, I think for a long time, and I think up to this point, I think that was partly my, my journey even to faith, was that in many ways, I would be looking to make sure, because I saw my father, my parents, if you come from an immigrant background or you don't come from an immigrant background, we have sacrificial parents, you're like, they've done so much for me, I want to pay it back. And that's a debt you can never really fully pay back, even if you do everything. And so for such a long time, I would be really pushing to say, like, God, Father, I want to make sure that I honor my dad, honor my mom, and do that. And even when times when I'm thinking I'm disappointing them, they're like, what are you talking about? We're proud of you. I think I started to get over when I realized that that's a treadmill you'll never get off of. And at some point, it wasn't healthy when you feel like I'm just never making any ground, whether it was my earthly father or my heavenly father. And I think that's where I came to even the idea around faith, where I said, you know what, man, like that was an idea where it's just like, I will never do enough. And so I got to actually have some security that no matter what I do, even though I'm going to give my best, I'm still solid, I'm still secure. And I think I was fortunate to have a dad who was kind of like, I'm beyond proud of you. It doesn't matter what, I'm proud. And so I think getting over that was more of faith. I don't know if anybody really gets over it on this side of glory, man. I'm not fully over it. But I think I have a more healthier relationship with my work and my performance and what I do and my standing, that I don't feel like, man, I'm completely nothing if I'm not doing enough or if I'm not performing enough or making good on all the goals I have.
I wanted to ask you also, as a man who was a high-performing athlete, speaking to athletes after they distance themselves from their experience, I noticed a lot of people didn't love the sport. They did the sport for validation. Did you see that at all?
Oh, yeah, man. It was an outlet. I think even brothers right now, no matter what age you are, sometimes the gym is part release, stress release, but also there's something to be like, there was identity formation, right? You became somebody, you belonged to something. So whether you were track and field, it was more singular, or you're basketball, I think as you balled, or I played soccer, football, to many, right? You belong. So you already had identity built in, right? Where I'm the midfielder, or I'm the one guard, I'm a two guard, I'm whatever. And I think there's something about just that not even just the rush, but the fact that I'm needed, I'm valuable. And it seemed like there was a direct relationship between what I put in and actually the outcome of how I got that validation. So you felt like you had more control over it, right? So it's like, if I just put in the work, I work hard, I do what I need to do, I'm faster, right? If I put up the shots, I'm better. And I think that's both partly addictive, right? But I think there's something to be said around that. I think it's a powerful, powerful mechanism of like realizing your value, your belonging to something much larger, but also it's like identity, because especially if you excel, there becomes an identity tied to it. You are the track star, you are the this. And actually that was something that tripped me up when I got to college, because after I finished high school, I had this dynamic where I wanted to go represent Nigeria in the Olympics. That was my goal. I didn't take any time off. I end up getting injured. And there's one thing to go for years where you the man. Everybody know, man. I mean, whether you the man that pick up on 21, you know what I'm saying? Everybody know you, man. He got the J on the outside, you know, like, or you the versus people even questioning your vision and your dreams, or nobody's really talking about you. And you know, that's, I think, for many people. You hear so many athletes. One of my former athletes, Olympic silver medalist, talks about this. My boy Trey Hardy at Texas. You know, where after you leave, who am I?
I'm glad you brought that point, because that's one of the hardest things for people, not even athletes, people who are high performers. Your whole identity is placed in that industry or that identity, and I think that's why a lot of people do stuff longer than they should, especially business people.
Oof.
Because I know people who probably should have retired like 20 years ago, bro, and they half dead, and they still doing it because as I've gotten older, I understand, like, what else do they have outside of that? And they haven't built any relationships outside of that.
Oof.
You know, so it's kind of that vibe, you know?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, you often see this. You see this in every industry. You see this in business, right? We've seen where somebody stayed too long. We see this in ministry, right? Where there's a generation now who can't necessarily, even economically, can't retire economically. But even if economically things were set, hypothetically, the transition of who am I outside of this pulpit, who am I outside of this role, who am I? There's a couple that I've been serving, it's like a year and a half, much older, mid-60s couple, and high earner, you know, brother, and she's concerned because you're just like, you know, he's getting older, he's still going, you know, pretty hard, and you know, he's just like, you know, that's what I'm known for, I'm good, and it's almost this fear of like, man, I don't know who I am after that. Will I, number one, will you value me the same way? Can I earn the same way? And I just don't even like that dynamic. On top of that, what you pointed on as well, the dynamic of relationships, especially for brothers. Often we're a lot utilitarian, I would say. I say this generally, but it's a lot more utilitarian than what this has got to do, more pragmatic. And a lot of times the relationships are either my significant other, if you're fortunate, and then work. And then when work is gone, our sisters, man, shout out to our sisters. Our sisters do a really good job. I think it's part of how they were designed in their divine embodiment, that they're really relational. You know, brothers and oftentimes relate by competition, right, versus just communal. And so often when that's gone, now the brother's looking around. So you both lose relationships that are core. You belong to something. Now those are gone. And then on top of that, you're like, who am I? And then at the end of the way, the world is looking at you like, we only value you based on what you can provide. And so you have this two-tier dynamic of like, it's hard for me to transition because it's like, I don't know who I am on the other side of that. I don't know if I could kind of recreate a new identity, or I'm holding on to this. It's kind of like when people talk about relationships and they like, you know, people often are straddling and they're like, you can't receive the new one until you let go of that old one because you're afraid if I let go of the old one, I don't get the new one, then I lost that too. Similarly, I think when it comes to it comes to career and what you do, human doing versus human being, that same dynamic. It's like, if I let go of old girl and nobody new that's better comes by, I'm afraid I'm going to be by myself. There's a by myself view about career that I think brothers and sisters have, but particularly brothers where it's like, if I let go, who am I?
I didn't know how privileged I was growing up in regards to my position in society. As an athlete, we get a distorted view because you may be all-state, but you want to be all-American, right? Versus the man that no one ever says hi or girls don't talk to him. And that's the majority of boys. So like a lot of times we have these conversations, they're like, what you would refer to as a high-performing person. But the experience of the average boy in America is like pretty lonely. And they never have any, like, the simplest thing for someone to say hi to you and look you in your eyes, to ask you how your day is doing. Or you have a lot of boys that never heard good job, bro.
Man, that is such a good point. You know, I think, you know, what's interesting, right? You know, you think about when, you know, you see when your parents get older, one of the things that's like really shocking even as you get older is that you realize your parents were children. Like the older they get, you realize how sometimes they at times could be somewhat childish. And you realize that they're imperfect and not superhuman. It's almost like the veil broke, like Santa Claus ain't real. Similarly, you'll also get older in life and you'll hear about people who, they still hold on to things that happened in high school. They're holding on to things, not just families things, but like, I remember what you did to me, or they're going to reunion, like I'm gonna show that person. And you're like, wow, that stuff is really formative. But now when you take the context of like, being somebody, being known versus even at that formative time, that really, like that really like firms up in this person's brain. And I think there's some statistics that talks about even like 1/2 of brothers will never marry, right? I think more than even a third will never have sex in their life, will never reproduce, right? And so this idea is almost like the bubble. If you're doing well socioeconomically, you think that your world is the world, and then you recognize like, yo, I'm privileged, right? Yo, man, like this is not normal, right? My parents being here is not normal. My parents being alive is not normal. Me being able to not be necessarily paid check to check is not normal. Similarly, this idea to say you're seen, you're valued. I remember there was a conversation a couple years ago. It was like before the pandemic really hit, and I was talking about loneliness, and that's been my work for a while. And a sister, I remember, I put the post, she was like, Lawrence, you make this seem so sad, like people out here lonely. Who's lonely like this? And I said, man, you are an Ivy League educated, multi-degree, commercially attractive young woman who is married with children. Have you considered that you may not be the normal experience or the common experience of most of the people in society? And I think to your point, when it comes to brothers coming up where they were not seen, they were not valued in that way, you realize like that's the norm. Now you see the sleeping giant of our time where they're growing up. They still have human desires. They still want to be known. Everybody does. You know, when people talk about love, I always distinguish, right? People say like, everybody deserves love. I'm like, yeah, not necessarily romantic love, right? But we're all made to be loved. That doesn't change whether or not you were privileged or not. So you have that. And so the challenge becomes, if I don't have that privilege of the parents, the friendships, the upward mobility professionally, the standing as it relates to my social circles by sports or otherwise, that hunger's still there. I have to fulfill it somehow. And so somehow that could be addiction. Somehow that could be isolation, and I get it through unhealthy relationships.
Bro. I think that's why the horn's so big with men, you know?
Mm-hmm. You said what?
The womanizing the horn. I think that's why it's so big with men, you know?
Brother, man, because I am somebody, right? And everybody wants the sense to be the man on their block. You see that dynamic, whether it's the block, whether it's your neighborhood. This is a universally human condition. I am somebody because you are somebody, but you're somebody in another regard. And I think if you have an unhealthy relationship, we see that every single day. Every single day, brothers and sisters are crying out, I'm somebody, do you see me? And so I always hear the block. I remember growing up, Brooklyn, Caton Ave, Flatbush, you would even summers. Like I love the summers in the city or Brooklyn or Harlem, cats rolling out with the music playing. Oh, so it's like, you hear the music, why is it so loud? See me. See me, look at this, look at this. Or you hear brothers say like, oh, no, I got this car for me. Some part of it is the sport of it, but some part of it is just like, you want the sisters, you want people to see, oh, you got that car, you rolled through the block with that new range. You want people to see it. Similar, oh, no, I got this hair for me. I got the body thing for me. No, you can't even see yourself. You got it because of the attention. There's some part of it you enjoy, that you see, but some part of it is because it's the attention and the validation you get from it. It's nothing new under the sun, man.